Tessa knew something was wrong when his wounds started healing faster than anything she'd seen in 10 years of medicine, but she didn't run. Not even when his eyes turned molten silver and he snarled that she'd just broken an ancient law. The triplets he clutched never cried, just watched her with an intelligence that made her skin crawl, and when the howling started circling her clinic at 3 a.m., he finally told her the truth. He was a king, they wanted his children dead, and she was now marked for execution. The first assassins kicked down her door 90 seconds later. Hello, my wonderful story family. I want you to join me and explore Tessa's story by subscribing to this channel. That's your own way of supporting me, and I will appreciate knowing someone listened to this story. Now, let's start. The rain came down like a whisper at first, then a murmur, then a steady drumming that turned the mountain road into a black mirror. Tessa Hale's headlights carved twin tunnels through the dark, illuminating nothing but asphalt, pine trees pressed close like sentries, and the occasional glint of a reflector post vanishing behind her. Her hands gripped the wheel with the particular numbness that came after a 14-hour shift. The kind of tired that settled into your bones and made even breathing feel like work. The clinic had been understaffed again. It was always understaffed, and she'd spent the day stitching up a logger's hand, talking down a panicked father whose daughter had a fever, and restocking supplies that should have been restocked 3 days ago. She should have been home an hour ago. The engine hummed its familiar, rattling tune, a sound she'd stopped hearing years ago. The wipers dragged across the windshield in rhythmic sweeps. Left, right. Hypnotic. Her eyes burned. Just 10 more minutes. Then tea. Then bed. Then her foot slammed the brake. The car screeched, fishtailed slightly on the wet road, and lurched to a stop. Her seatbelt bit into her chest. Her heart hammered against her ribs. There. In the road. A shape. Dark. Sprawled. No. Not a shape. A body. Jesus, she breathed. For a second, she just sat there, hands still locked on the wheel, her mind racing through possibilities. Drunk? Injured hiker? Dead deer she'd mistaken for. It moved. Tessa's breath caught. She killed the engine, grabbed her emergency kit from the passenger seat, and pushed open the door. Rain hit her face immediately, cold and sharp. She left the headlights on, their beams cutting through the downpour to illuminate the figure more clearly. Not a deer. A man. Massive. Even collapsed on his side. He looked too large, too solid. Dark hair plastered to his skull. Clothes torn and soaked through. No, not just soaked. Drenched in blood. It pooled beneath him, mixing with the rainwater, streaming toward the shoulder in thin red rivers. And cradled against his chest, bundled in what looked like a shredded jacket. Oh God. 3 tiny forms. Impossibly small. Newborns. Tessa's training kicked in before her shock could fully register. She ran forward, kit in hand, her sneakers splashing through puddles. Sir, can you hear me? His head turned, just slightly, and his eyes opened. They were pale, storm gray, feral, the kind of eyes that didn't ask, they commanded. Even half dead, even bleeding out on a mountain road in the middle of nowhere, there was something in that gaze that made her stop 3 feet short. Don't. His voice was a growl. Low. Rough. A sound that came from somewhere deep in his chest. Don't come closer. She froze, her hands still outstretched, rain dripping from her fingertips. You're hurt, she said, forcing her voice to stay calm, steady. Nurse voice. The one she used on frightened patients. You need help. Those babies. Mine. The word came out sharp, possessive. His arms tightened fractionally around the bundles. One of them let out a thin, mewling cry. Tessa's heart twisted. I'm a nurse, she said, louder now, stepping forward despite the warning in his eyes. I'm not going to hurt you. Or them. But if you don't let me help, you're all going to die out here. His jaw clenched. Blood seeped from a gash along his temple, trailing down his cheek. His breathing was labored, shallow. She could see now that his shirt, what was left of it, was shredded across his ribs, deep claw marks raking through fabric and flesh alike. Claw marks. Her stomach turned, but she shoved the thought aside. Please, she said, softer now. She knelt, slowly, keeping her hands visible. Non-threatening. Let me help. For a long moment, he just stared at her. Rain poured between them. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled. Then his eyes fluttered. Kale, he whispered. His voice cracked.
Ren.
Luma. What? Their names. His head sagged. Kale.
Ren.
Luma. And then he collapsed. The babies tumbled slightly as his grip went slack. Tessa lunged forward, catching the nearest bundle before it could hit the asphalt. Her hands closed around warm, wriggling weight, and a tiny fist pushed free of the fabric, grasping at nothing. Okay. I've got you. She worked fast. First, the babies. She checked each one, breathing, pulse, temperature.
Cold but alive.
Thank God. She wrapped them tighter in the remains of the jacket, then tucked them carefully into the back seat of her car, surrounding them with her spare blankets and her own coat. Then the man. He was heavy. Heavier than anyone she'd ever tried to move. She got her hands under his arms and pulled, her boots sliding on the slick pavement, her shoulders screaming in protest. Inch by inch, she dragged him toward the car. His head lolled. Blood smeared across the road. Come on, she muttered through gritted teeth. Come on. She didn't know how she got him into the back seat. Adrenaline, maybe. Desperation. But somehow, she managed to wedge his massive frame across the seat, his legs bent awkwardly, his head resting against the door. The babies whimpered. Tessa climbed into the driver's seat, shaking, soaked to the bone. Her hands trembled as she turned the key. The engine coughed, sputtered. Please, she whispered, and roared to life. She threw the car into gear and gunned it. The clinic was 20 minutes away. The nearest hospital, 40. She didn't know who this man was. Didn't know what had happened to him, or why he'd been alone on a mountain road with 3 newborns in the middle of the night. But as she glanced in the rearview mirror, at his pale, blood-streaked face, at the tiny bundles nestled beside him, she knew one thing for certain. Everything had just changed. The storm chased her down the mountain. Tessa white-knuckled the steering wheel, her eyes flicking between the road and the rearview mirror. The man hadn't moved since she'd loaded him in. His chest rose and fell in shallow, irregular rhythms. The babies, Kale, Rin, Luma, she reminded herself, lay silent in their makeshift nest of blankets. Too silent. Stay with me, she muttered, though she wasn't sure if she was talking to him or herself. Just stay with me. 10 more minutes. That's all I need. The clinic appeared through the rain like a lighthouse, a small, squat building with peeling paint and a flickering sign that read Pine Ridge Medical. Tessa had never been so grateful to see it. She parked crooked, didn't bother locking the doors. The babies first. She carried all 3 in one careful armful, shouldering through the front door and laying them gently on the examination table under the heat lamp. Then back out into the rain. Getting him inside nearly broke her. She dragged him through the door, across the linoleum, leaving a streak of diluted blood in their wake. By the time she hoisted him onto the second exam table, the reinforced one she used for the loggers, her arms were shaking and her scrubs clung to her like a second skin. Okay, she panted. Okay. You're okay. He wasn't okay. She cut away what remained of his shirt with trauma shears, and her breath caught. Deep lacerations crisscrossed his torso, for parallel gouges that looked like they'd been made by something with claws. But that wasn't what made her pause. It was the edges of the wounds. They shimmered faintly, traced with something that looked like fine silver dust. And the surrounding tissue, it was angry, inflamed, rejecting whatever had touched it. What the hell, she whispered. She reached for her usual saline rinse, but when the liquid touched the residue, his body convulsed. A low, guttural sound escaped his throat, not quite a groan. Something deeper, more primal. Tessa jerked back, heart hammering. His pulse, when she finally found it, was wrong. Too slow, then suddenly racing, then slow again. Arrhythmic in a way that should have meant shock or heart failure, but his color was already better than it had been on the road. And the gash on his temple? It had been pouring blood 20 minutes ago. Now the edges were knitting together. "No," she said aloud. "That's not." She grabbed her penlight, checked his pupils. Responsive. Even. She pressed her stethoscope to his chest, listening past the rain drumming on the roof. His heartbeat was strong. Stronger than it had any right to be. From the other table, one of the babies cooed softly. Tessa glanced over. 3 pairs of eyes stared back at her. Wide, unblinking, far too aware for newborns. They didn't cry. Didn't fuss. They just watched. A chill ran down her spine. "You're all very strange," she murmured. "You know that." She turned back to the man, the stranger, and worked methodically. Cleaned the wounds as best she could, avoiding the silvery traces. Applied antiseptic. Bandaged what needed bandaging. His skin was feverish under her hands, but not dangerously so. As she worked, she studied his face. Strong jaw. Sharp cheekbones. A scar that cut through one dark eyebrow. Even unconscious, even half-dead, he looked like someone used to being obeyed. There was a hardness to him, a severity. But when her hand accidentally brushed his fingers twitched. Reaching. Tessa's throat tightened. "Who are you?" she whispered. His dreams were red. Blood on stone. Torches in the dark. The great hall of Thornhaven burning. Traitor. The word echoed from a dozen mouths. His council. His generals. Faces he'd trusted, twisted now with rage and fear. "The children are abominations. You've broken the old laws. You're no king of ours."
Claws. Teeth.
Silver flashing in the firelight. He ran. Not from fear. Never from fear, but because the bundles in his arms were more important than his pride. More important than his crown. He ran through the forest, through the rain, feeling his strength bleed out with every step. And then, light.
Headlights.
A woman's voice cutting through the storm. Mortal. Fragile. But her hands had been gentle. Tessa was adjusting his fore when he stirred. His lips moved, shaping soundless words. She leaned closer. "Sir? Can you hear me?" "If I don't." His voice was barely a rasp. His eyes cracked open, unfocused, feverish. "If I don't wake." "You're going to wake," Tessa said firmly. "You're stable. You just need to rest. Remember their names." His hand lifted slightly, trembling. "Promise me." Her chest ached. "Kale, Rin, and Luma," she said softly. "I remember. I promise." Something in his expression softened. His hand fell back to the table. And then he was gone again, pulled under by unconsciousness or exhaustion or blood loss. Maybe all 3. Tessa exhaled shakily and turned to check on the babies. That's when she heard it. Outside. Distant at first, then closer. Howling. Not one voice. Many. The sound raised every hair on the back of her neck. It wasn't the usual coyote chorus she sometimes heard up in the hills. This was different.
Organized. Hunting.
Tessa moved to the window and peered through the rain-streaked glass. Nothing but darkness and trees. But the howling continued. And somewhere in the clinic, the stranger's breathing hitched, just once, as if even in sleep, he knew they were coming. The rain had stopped sometime around 3 in the morning, leaving the world outside wrapped in a cold, dripping silence. Tessa moved through the clinic on autopilot, cleaning blood from the floor, with bleach that stung her nostrils, checking vitals, changing bandages. The stranger, she still didn't have a name for him, slept deeply now, his breathing even. The fever had broken an hour ago. By all logic, he should still be critical. Instead, he looked like a man recovering from the flu, not someone who'd been clawed open and left to die on a mountain road. Impossible. She'd stopped trying to make sense of it. The babies were awake. All 3 of them, nestled together in the padded bassinet she'd scrounged from storage. They didn't cry, they never cried, but they were restless, making small sounds that might have been hunger. Tessa warmed formula in the tiny kitchenette, testing the temperature on her wrist the way she'd been taught during her pediatric rotation a lifetime ago. One by one, she fed them, cradling each small body against her chest. Kale, she thought it was kale, the biggest of the three, watched her face the entire time he ate, his gray eyes solemn and searching. "You're too alert," she whispered to him. "Babies your age shouldn't be tracking movement like that." He blinked.
Once. Slowly.
A chill skittered across her shoulders. She was settling Luma, the smallest, with a tuft of dark hair, back into the bassinet when she heard it again.
Howling. Closer this time.
Tessa froze, bottle still in hand. She counted the voices.
4.
Maybe 5. They called to each other in a pattern that sounded almost like language, rising, falling, answering. Not random, not wild. Coordinated. She moved to the window and eased back the blinds. The parking lot was empty except for her car. Beyond it, the tree line was a wall of shadow and mist. Nothing moved, but the howling continued, circling somewhere in the woods behind the clinic. Tessa's pulse quickened. Then headlights. A dark SUV rolled slowly down the access road, its high beams cutting through the pre-dawn gloom. It slowed as it passed the clinic.
Stopped.
The engine idled. Tessa dropped the blinds and stepped back, pressing herself against the wall. They're looking for something. Or someone. The SUV's engine revved. Then it moved on, disappearing around the bend. She waited, counting her heartbeats.
60.
90. 120. Silence. She exhaled and turned back toward the exam room, and found the stranger's eyes open. Roven knew the scent of betrayal. It clung to the air like smoke, even through the sting of antiseptic and the faint sweetness of soap. His hunters were close. The ones who'd worn his colors, eaten at his table, sworn oaths in his hall. The ones who'd tried to kill him. He tried to sit up. Pain lanced through his ribs, white-hot and vicious. His body wasn't healing fast enough. The silver was still in his system, burning through muscle and bone like acid. The children. Panic surged. He twisted, searching, and there, 3 small shapes in a bassinet. Safe. Breathing. And the woman. She stood in the doorway, frozen, her dark eyes wide.
Mortal.
He could smell her fear, sharp and bright, but beneath it, something steadier. Resolve. "You're awake," she said, her voice carefully neutral.
Nurse voice, he realized.
The tone of someone trained not to panic.
He tried to speak. His throat was raw.
"Where?" "My clinic. Pine Ridge. You've been out for about 5 hours." She moved closer slowly, hands visible. "Your wounds were extensive. You should still be critical," but she hesitated. "You're healing."
Fast.
"Faster than anything I've ever seen." Roven's jaw tightened.
The children, he managed.
"They're fine. Fed, warm, stable." Her gaze flicked to the bassinet, then back to him. "You want to tell me what happened to you?" Knives in the dark. The council chamber lit by torchlight. Declan's face, twisted with righteousness. "You broke the covenant, Roven. You laid with a human. These things you call your heirs, they're poison to our kind. They're my sons, my daughter. They're abominations." Silver blades drawn. The scent of betrayal thick as blood. Roven closed his eyes. "Assassination," he said quietly. "My own counsel." Tessa went very still. "Why?" "Because I refuse to kill my children." The words hung between them, heavy and raw. Before she could respond, the howling started again, much closer now. Just beyond the building. Roven's eyes snapped open. His nostrils flared. "They're here," he whispered. Tessa's stomach dropped. "Who's here?" But he was already trying to sit up, teeth bared against the pain. Every muscle in his body coiled for a fight he was in no condition to win. "Stay down," Tessa hissed, pushing him back with a hand to his shoulder. He could have thrown her off easily, should have, but he let her press him down, his eyes locked on the window. "You need to run," he said. "Take the children."
"Go. Now."
"I'm not leaving you. They'll kill you to get to me." His hand shot out, catching her wrist. His grip was fever-hot, trembling with urgency. "And they'll take them. Do you understand? You have to." A shadow passed the window. Tessa's breath stopped. It moved slowly, deliberately.
Tall.
Broad-shouldered. human-shaped, but the way it moved, fluid, predatory, was all wrong. Another shadow joined the first. Then a third. They were surrounding the building. Tessa's fingers found the stranger's hand and squeezed. "Tell me what they are," she whispered. His gray eyes met hers, and in them she saw something ancient and wild and absolutely certain. "Wolves," he said. The front door rattled. And then silence. The kind of silence that came right before the storm broke. Tessa's heart hammered against her ribs. In the bassinet, the babies stared up at the ceiling, wide-eyed and watchful. Waiting. The silence shattered. Glass exploded inward from the back window. Tessa threw herself over the bassinet, shielding the babies as shards rained across the linoleum.
Her ears rang.
Her pulse roared. And then a growl. Not from outside. From the exam table. Rowan was on his feet. Tessa didn't see how one moment he'd been lying half dead, the next he was standing, swaying, his body coiled tight despite the bandages splitting across his ribs. Blood seeped through the white gauze, fresh and dark. But his eyes had changed. They blazed silver, not gray, not pale blue, but silver, bright as molten metal, inhuman and absolute. The air around him seemed to thicken, pressing down on the room like a physical weight. Tessa's knees nearly buckled. It wasn't fear, exactly. It was submission. Every cell in her body screamed at her to drop her gaze, to kneel, to bow her head before something far greater than herself. She locked her knees and forced herself to meet those burning eyes. "What are you?" she whispered. Rowan's voice came out low, resonant, layered with something that shouldn't have been possible from a human throat. "My name is Rowan Ashfell." Each word carried weight, authority. "I am Alpha King of the Northern Clans, Sovereign of Thornhaven. And you." His gaze swept over her, assessing. "You should not have helped me." Tessa let out a breathless, incredulous laugh. "You're delirious," she said. "You've lost too much blood. You're hallucinating." His lips pulled back. Not a smile, a snarl. And his teeth. Oh God, his teeth. Longer. Sharper. Canines that curved like a predator's. Tessa stumbled back, her hip colliding with the counter. Her medical bag clattered to the floor. "No," she said. "No, that's not. People don't. I am not people." Rowan took a step toward her. The movement was fluid despite his injuries, deliberate. "Dangerous. I am wolf-born, as are my children, as were the ones who tried to kill us. The babies." Tessa's gaze snapped to the bassinet. Kale, Rin, and Luma stared up at her with those two aware eyes, and suddenly she understood why they never cried, why they watched everything, why they felt wrong in a way she couldn't articulate. "You're insane," she breathed. "Look at me." She didn't want to. Every instinct pulled her to run, to grab her keys and flee into the woods and never look back. But she looked. Rowan's eyes flared brighter. The air shimmered around him, and for just a moment, a single, impossible moment, his shadow on the wall behind him shifted. Grew. Twisted into something massive and four-legged, with a spine that arched and ears that pricked forward. Then it was gone. Just a man again. Bleeding. Battered. But unmistakably other. Tessa's breath came in short, shallow gasps. "This isn't real. It is the only real thing in this room." Rowan's voice gentled slightly, though the dominance never left it. "You saved my life. You saved theirs. For that, you have my gratitude. But you have also made yourself a target." I don't understand. Our laws are old. Absolute." His jaw tightened. "Humans are forbidden. Contact with your kind is punishable by exile. Or death." "Then why?" Tessa's voice cracked. "Why did you?" "Because I loved her." The words came out raw. Their mother. I loved her, and I broke every law to keep her. And when the council discovered what I'd done, they killed her for it. His hand drifted toward the bassinet, hovering over the sleeping infants. They would have killed these three as well. So I ran. Tessa pressed her back against the counter, her mind racing. Wolves. He was talking about werewolves. Shapeshifters. Monsters from storybooks and late-night movies. Except he was standing in front of her, bleeding and real, with eyes that glowed like moonlight. "You're telling me," she said slowly, "that there are people wolves out there hunting you. Right now." "Yes." "And they want to kill your children." "Yes." "And me, apparently, because I helped you." Rovin's expression darkened. "If they discover you harbor us, they will not grant you mercy. My kind do not forgive breaches of the old laws." Tessa's laugh was half hysterical. Too late for that. A howl rose outside, long, mournful, and far too close. Rovin's head snapped toward the broken window. His nostrils flared. "3 of them," he murmured. "Clan scouts. They've picked up the scent. What do we do?" He turned to her, and for the first time, she saw something other than dominance in his silver eyes.
Fear.
"You run," he said. "Take the children. There's a service road behind the building. I'm not leaving you to die. I am already dead if they breach this room." His voice rose, edged with desperation. "But they're my blood. They carry the royal line. If you—" The lights flickered.
Once. Twice.
And then the clinic plunged into darkness. In the sudden black, Tessa heard 3 things. The babies, breathing softly in their bassinet. Rovin's growl, low and lethal. And the sound of claws, sharp, deliberate, scraping against the front door. "Rovin," she whispered. His hand found hers in the dark. His grip was firm, burning hot. "Stay behind me." The door splintered, and the wolves came in. The first one through the door was massive. Even in the darkness, Tessa could make out his silhouette, broad-shouldered, moving with unnatural speed. His eyes caught the emergency exit light above the hall, reflecting back yellow-green like a cat's. Rovin shoved her behind him. "Take the children," he growled. "Back room. Now." But Tessa's feet wouldn't move. She stood frozen, her back pressed against the counter, watching as 2 more shapes poured through the shattered doorway. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The lead wolf, a man with a shaved head and ritual scars running down both arms, smiled. It was the coldest thing Tessa had ever seen. "Your Majesty," he said, the title dripping with mockery. "The council sends its regards." Rovin's response was a snarl that rattled the windows. And then he changed. Not fully, not into the 4-legged shadow Tessa had glimpsed on the wall. But his spine arched. His shoulders broadened impossibly. His fingers lengthened, tipped with claws that gleamed black in the dim light. His face shifted, jaw extending, teeth sharpening, eyes blazing pure silver. He was caught between forms, man and beast, beautiful and monstrous all at once. Tessa's scream died in her throat. The assassin lunged. They collided in the center of the room with a sound like thunder. Claws raked across flesh. Blood sprayed. Rovin caught the man by the throat and threw him, 15 feet, straight through the waiting room door. The frame splintered. The assassin hit the far wall and crumpled. The other 2 attacked simultaneously. Rovin was fast, faster than anything Tessa had ever seen, but he was injured, weakened. One of them got past his guard, sinking claws deep into his side. He roared, twisting, slamming his elbow into the attacker's skull with a crack that made Tessa's stomach turn. But there were too many, and he was fading. She could see it in the way he stumbled, in the way his breathing came ragged and wet. The bandages across his ribs were crimson now, soaked through. He'd reopened every wound. "Move," Tessa's mind screamed. "Do something." Her hand found the metal supply rod leaning against the autoclave, a 2-foot length of steel she used to prop open the high windows. She grabbed it, hefted its weight. The third assassin, a wiry woman with white blonde hair, circled toward the bassinet. "No."
Tessa didn't think.
She just swung. The rod caught the woman across the shoulders. The impact jarred up Tessa's arms, numbing her hands. The assassin spun, eyes flashing gold, lips peeling back from elongated fangs. "You dare." Rovin hit her like a freight train. They went down in a tangle of limbs and fury. The assassin's claws opened 3 parallel gashes across Rovin's chest, but He didn't stop. His jaws closed around her shoulder. Human teeth lengthened into wolf's fangs, and she screamed. Tessa backed toward the bassinet, rod raised, heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. The lead assassin was back on his feet. Blood poured from a gash above his eye, but he was grinning. 2 humans and a broken king, he said. The council was right. You've gone soft, Ashfell. Rovan shoved the blonde woman away. She hit the wall and didn't get up and turned to face him. He swayed, barely upright. Blood dripped from his claws. Soft. His voice was barely human now, layered with a bass growl that vibrated in Tessa's chest. Come closer. Let me show you soft. The assassin drew a blade. Silver. It gleamed even in the low light. Rovan flinched back, just slightly, and Tessa saw the fear flash across his face. The silver in his wounds. It's still poisoning him. The assassin saw it too. He lunged. Rovan tried to dodge, but his legs buckled. He went down on one knee. Move left. Tessa didn't know why she shouted it. Didn't know what instinct drove the words from her throat. But Rovan obeyed. He threw himself left, and the blade whistled past his throat, missing by inches. In the same motion, he swept the assassin's legs. The man went down hard. Rovan was on him instantly, claws at his throat. Rovan, the window. Tessa's voice cracked. Behind you.
He spun.
The 4th assassin, one Tessa hadn't even seen, was halfway through the broken window, eyes locked on the bassinet. Rovan moved. He crossed the room in 2 massive bounds and caught the intruder by the ankle, yanking him back through the shattered frame. Glass tore into flesh. The assassin howled. Rovan dragged him inside and slammed him into the floor so hard the linoleum cracked. Then silence. For bodies. 3 unconscious or worse. 1 pinned beneath Rovan's bloodied hand. Tessa's breath came in short, sharp gasps. The rod slipped from her numb fingers and clattered to the floor. Rovan looked up at her. His face was still half-shifted, too sharp, too feral, but his eyes found hers, and something passed between them. Exhaustion. Relief. A fragile, desperate trust. Are they? Her voice shook. Are the babies safe? His voice was rough, barely intelligible. You kept them safe. Tessa's knees gave out. She sank to the floor beside the bassinet, reaching in with trembling hands to touch each small face.
Kale. Rin.
Luma. All 3 staring up at her, wide-eyed but unharmed. I don't understand, she whispered. Why did you listen to me? Rovan's gaze held hers for a long moment. Then, slowly, his features began to shift back, bones realigning, claws retracting, teeth shrinking. When he spoke again, his voice was almost human. Because you were right. He rose unsteadily, turned toward the assassin still pinned beneath him. The man was conscious, glaring up with pure hatred. Tell the council, Rovan said quietly, dangerously, that their king still lives, and that the heirs are under my protection. They'll send more, the assassin spat. They'll send the entire garrison. You can't protect them forever. Perhaps not. Rovan's clawed hand tightened around the man's throat. But I will die trying. Then he released him. The assassin scrambled back, blood streaming from a dozen wounds. He staggered to his feet, eyes flicking between Rovan and Tessa, and then, impossibly, he smiled. The human, he said softly. She fought for them, protected them. His gaze locked on Tessa. The council will love that. Before Rovan could move, the assassin shifted. His body twisted, bones snapping and reforming in a grotesque symphony. Fur rippled across the skin. In seconds, a massive gray wolf stood where the man had been. It turned and leapt through the broken window. Rovan lunged after it, but his legs gave out. He collapsed against the wall, gasping, his hand pressed to the reopened wounds on his side. Let him go, Tessa said, her voice hollow. Let him run. He'll tell them, Rovan rasped. He'll tell them about you. I know. Outside, the wolf's howl echoed through the pre-dawn woods, a signal, a warning, a promise. Help was coming. And so were the hunters. Tessa met Rovin's silver eyes across the ruined clinic. Then I guess, she said quietly, we'd better be ready. Dawn broke gray and cold through the shattered windows. Tessa worked in silence, her hands steady despite the tremor that still lived in her chest. She'd cleared the debris, barricaded the broken window with plywood from the supply shed, and dragged the unconscious assassins, the ones who were only unconscious, outside and zip-tied them to the drainage pipe. She'd stopped questioning whether this was real. The blood on her hands was real enough. Now Rovin sat on the exam table, his massive frame somehow diminished in the pale morning light. He'd shifted back fully, entirely human now, except for his eyes, which still held that unnatural silver sheen. His torso was a canvas of wounds, old and new, silver-poisoned flesh struggling to heal. Tessa dabbed antiseptic along the deepest gash, the one that ran from his ribs to his hip. He didn't flinch. You need a hospital, she said.
No.
You've lost too much blood. These wounds, some of them are infected. The silver will burn itself out. His voice was quiet, tired. My kind heal, given time. And if you don't have time? His eyes met hers. Then I don't. Tessa's jaw tightened. She pressed a clean bandage to his side, perhaps harder than necessary. He took the contact without reaction. Tell me, she said. All of it. If I'm already dead for helping you, I at least deserve to know why. Rovin was silent for a long moment. Outside, birds began their morning chorus, oblivious to the violence that had shattered the night. Finally he spoke.
We are old, he began.
Older than your written history. We walked these mountains before your ancestors crossed the ocean. We built our holds in the deep places, raised our young beneath the moon, and we survived by one immutable law: secrecy. Tessa cleaned another wound, listening. Humans must never know we exist. To reveal ourselves is to invite war, a war we would win, but at a cost neither side could bear. So we hide. We live among you in your cities, in your towns. We hold your jobs, pay your taxes, smile at your neighbors. His expression darkened. And we obey the old laws. Always. Until you didn't. Until I didn't. He looked toward the bassinet where the triplets slept, bundled together. Something softened in his face, something almost gentle. Her name was Anna, he said quietly. She was a teacher. Human. I met her in a town north of here, during treaty negotiations with the Eastern Pax. She was bright, fearless. She saw me, truly saw me, and didn't look away. Tessa's hand slowed. The law forbids it, Rovin continued. Wolf and human cannot bond.
Cannot mate.
The risk of exposure is too great. But his voice roughened. I loved her, and when she carried my children, I thought, foolishly, that my council would accept them, that the bloodline would matter more than the law. They didn't. They called them abominations, half-breeds, weak. Rovin's fists clenched against his thighs. They gave me a choice: execute the children and their mother, or be branded traitor. I refused. So they took the choice from me. Tessa's breath caught. They killed her. In the birthing chamber. While I was in council session, swearing oaths I thought would protect her. His eyes blazed. By the time I reached her, she was gone. And they came for the children next. So you ran. I took my sons and daughter, and I fled the only home I've ever known. He looked down at his scarred hands. They sent hunters, assassins, the best of the clans, all to end 3 infant lives because their blood is not pure. Tessa set down the antiseptic, her mind reeling. That's monstrous. That is law. Law isn't the same as justice. Rovin's gaze snapped to hers, sharp and searching. You speak of justice. My people speak of survival. For 10,000 years, secrecy has kept us alive. One human learning the truth can unravel everything. Then why tell me? Because you already know. His voice dropped. And because you fought for them. Not for me, for them. A human woman, wielding a metal rod against trained killers, because 3 children you'd never met needed protection. Tessa's throat tightened. "They're babies," she said simply. "What else would I do?" "Most would run. Most would save themselves." "I'm a nurse. We don't run." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or respect. He reached out slowly, carefully, and took her wrist. His touch was gentle despite the claws that still tipped his fingers. "You asked why I obeyed you," he said. "In the fight." Tessa nodded, not trusting her voice. "Because your commands held no dominance. No demand for submission. You saw the battle clearly and you helped. As an equal." His thumb brushed across her racing pulse. "I have never had an equal. Only subjects or enemies." "I'm not your subject."
No.
His eyes held hers. "You are not." The moment stretched between them, fragile and strange. Predator and prey. Wolf and human. King and nurse. Tessa pulled her hand back gently and returned to bandaging. "Your counsel," she said, keeping her voice steady. "They believe mercy is weakness. They believe survival requires strength. And strength requires purity of blood, unity of purpose, absolute loyalty. And love, where does that fit?" Rovin's silence was answer enough. Tessa secured the last bandage and stepped back, surveying her work. He was still a mess, bruised, torn, silver-scarred, but he'd live.
For now.
"In my world," she said quietly, "strength isn't about dominance. It's about protecting those who can't protect themselves. It's about choosing compassion even when it costs you." She met his eyes. "Maybe that's what your world needs. Not purity, humanity." Rovin stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. "You speak like her," he murmured.
"Anna."
She said mercy was the highest form of power. "She sounds wise."
She was.
"And they murdered her for it." Tessa's chest ached. She moved to the bassinet, gently checking each baby. Kale wrapped his tiny fingers around hers. Rin yawned. Luma watched her with those two knowing eyes. "They're beautiful," Tessa whispered. "They are everything." She turned back to Rovin. He was watching her with an intensity that should have frightened her. But beneath the predator's gaze, she saw something else.
Grief.
Desperation.
Hope.
"If I help you," she said slowly, "if I keep you hidden, keep them safe, what happens to me when this is over?" Rovin's jaw tightened. "I don't know. The law is clear. You've seen too much. You know too much." He paused. "By rights, the council would demand your death." Comforting. "But I am still king. And a king can grant sanctuary."
His voice strengthened.
"Stay with us. Help me protect them. And when this ends, if it ends, I will shield you. No matter the cost. You'd go to war with your own people. For a human." "I already have." Tessa looked at the babies. At Rovin. At the wreckage of her clinic, and the impossible choice laid before her. Run and they die. Stay and she might die. But those 3 small lives, bundled together and sleeping peacefully despite the violence that surrounded them, they deserved better than a world that wanted them dead for the crime of existing. "Okay," she said. Rovin's eyes widened. "Okay. I'll help you. But not because you're a king, and not because I'm afraid." She crossed her arms. "I'll help because they need me. And because what your council did, to Anna, to you, to these children is wrong. Law or not." For a long moment, Rovin simply stared. Then slowly he bowed his head. It was a small gesture. But from a king, an alpha, it meant everything. "Thank you," he said quietly. Tessa nodded, her heart hammering. Outside, the sun crept higher. The forest began to wake. And somewhere in the distance, wolves howled. The hunt wasn't over. It had only just begun. By midday, Rovin could stand without swaying. Tessa watched from across the clinic as he moved to the window, still human-shaped, but different now. There was a coiled energy in him that hadn't been there before, something primal stirring beneath his skin. His wounds had closed to angry red lines. The silver's poison was finally burning out. He was healing, which meant he was getting stronger. Which meant, "They're coming," he said, his voice cutting through her thoughts. Tessa's stomach dropped. How many? More than before. He tilted his head, nostrils flaring. I can smell them on the wind.
20.
Maybe 30. The council isn't taking chances this time.
30.
Tessa's voice cracked. You can barely fight off 4. I know. He turned from the window, and his silver eyes found hers. Steady, resolved. Which is why you need to leave.
Now.
She'd been expecting this.
No.
Tessa. I said no. Rovan crossed the space between them in 3 strides. Up close, he was overwhelming, tall enough that she had to tilt her head back, broad enough to block out the light. But his expression wasn't angry. It was desperate. You don't understand what's coming, he said. These won't be scouts or assassins. This will be an execution force. Veteran warriors, trained since birth to kill without hesitation. His hand lifted as if to touch her shoulder, then fell. If you're here when they arrive, they will not spare you. Mortal mercy doesn't exist in my world. Then it's a good thing I'm not from your world. This isn't a joke. I'm not joking. Tessa held his gaze. Those babies in there? They didn't ask to be born into a war. They didn't choose to have mixed blood or break your laws. They're innocent. And if you think I'm going to walk away and let them be slaughtered because some ancient council decided their lives don't matter, her voice shook with fury, then you don't know me at all. Rovan stared at her, something fierce and pained warring in his expression. You'll die, he said quietly. Maybe. She swallowed hard. But at least I'll die for something that matters. Silence stretched between them. Then Rovan closed his eyes and exhaled, a long, shuddering breath that sounded almost like grief. You are either the bravest woman I've ever met, he murmured, or the most foolish. Can't I be both? His lips twitched, almost a smile. Anna said something similar. Once. Tessa's chest tightened. I'm sorry, she said softly, for what they took from you. And I'm sorry for what they'll take from you. Rovan opened his eyes. The silver had deepened to molten steel. But if you're staying, if you truly mean to stand beside me, then I will not let you face them unprotected. Rovan. There is a way. He stepped back, his expression growing solemn. Formal. An old way. Before the laws of separation, before the divide between wolf and human, there were bonds. Oaths of protection that tied a guardian to the one they shielded. Blood to blood. Life to life. Tessa's pulse quickened. What kind of oath? One that would mark you as mine. His voice was careful. Under my protection. My authority. Any wolf who harms you would be committing an act of treason against the crown. He paused. It won't stop all of them, but it will give some pause. And it will give you access to my strength, should you need it. What's the cost? The bond is permanent. Your life would be tied to mine. If I fall, you... He trailed off. I fall too. Rovan nodded slowly. Tessa looked past him to the bassinet. 3 small faces, sleeping peacefully. Kale's tiny fist curled against his cheek. Rin's chest rising and falling. Luma's dark lashes resting against her skin. Worth it. How do we do this?
Tessa asked.
Rovan's eyes widened. You're certain? Are you going to keep asking? Or are we doing this before your army shows up? This time, he did smile. Faint and fleeting but real. Come here. Tessa stepped forward. Rovan took her hands, his palms rough and burning hot against hers, and guided her to face him fully. The clinic seemed to shrink around them. The world narrowed to his eyes, his presence, the steady thunder of his heartbeat. Repeat after me, he said, his voice dropping into something ancient and resonant. I, Tessa Hale. I, Tessa Hale. Offer my service freely. Offer my service freely. To protect the heirs of Ashfell. Her throat tightened. To protect the heirs of Ashfell. With my life, my strength, my will. With my life, my strength, my will. Rovan's grip tightened. His eyes began to glow. And I, Rovan Ashfell, Alpha King of the Northern clans, his voice filled the room, layered with power. Bind myself in turn, to shield this woman from all who would do her harm, to share my strength in her defense. to honor her courage with my protection. The air between them hummed. Blood to blood, Rovan said. Blood to blood, Tessa echoed. Life to life. Life to life. He released one of her hands and, without hesitation, dragged a claw across his palm. Blood welled, dark and rich. He held it out. Tessa's breath caught. But she didn't hesitate. She pulled the scalpel from her pocket, still there from cleaning wounds earlier, and made a quick, shallow cut across her own palm. Red bloomed against her skin. Rovan took her bleeding hand and pressed it to his. The effect was immediate. Light exploded between their joined palms, white gold and searing. It spread up Tessa's arm like liquid fire, not burning but awakening. Every nerve lit up, her heart synchronized with his, two rhythms becoming one. She gasped, stumbling, but Rovan's other arm caught her waist, holding her steady. "Don't fight it," he murmured. "Let it settle." The light intensified. Tessa could feel him now, not just his presence, but his essence.
His grief.
His determination. The fierce, all-consuming love he held for his children. It poured into her like a flood, overwhelming and intimate. And beneath it all, power.
Raw.
Ancient.
Vast.
It wasn't hers, but it was there. A reservoir she could draw from if needed. The light began to fade. Tessa looked down. Where their palms had joined, a mark remained on her skin, a silvery sigil that looked almost like a wolf's head, ears pricked, eyes alert. It shimmered faintly, then settled into her flesh like a tattoo. "It's done," Rovan said softly. Tessa flexed her hand. The mark moved with her skin, seamless. She could feel it, a gentle warmth, a tether connecting her to the man standing before her. "I can feel you," she whispered. "And I you." Rovan released her, stepping back, but his eyes never left hers. "You're packed now, Tessa Hale. Under my protection. Bound to my house." His voice dropped. "And I will die before I let them touch you." Tessa's eyes stung. She blinked hard. "Thank you," she managed.
"No."
Rovan shook his head. "Thank you." He looked toward the bassinet. "You've given them a chance. That's more than I could have asked." Tessa followed his gaze. The babies were awake now, all three staring at her with those uncanny, knowing eyes. And she could feel them too. Faint, like distant starlight, but there, three small pulses of life connected to hers through the bond. "We're going to keep them safe," she said firmly. "Yes." Rovan's hand drifted to the mark on her palm, his thumb brushing over it gently. Together. For a moment, they stood in silence, predator and healer, wolf and human, bound by choice and desperation and something neither could name. Then Rovan's head snapped up. His nostrils flared. His eyes blazed silver. "They're here," he growled. Outside, the forest had gone silent. No birds. No wind. Just the soft, steady sound of paws on earth. Tessa's newly marked hand tingled. Through the bond, she felt Rovan's rage ignite. "How long?" she asked. "Minutes. Maybe less." Tessa grabbed her medical kit, her makeshift weapon, her resolve. "Then let's make them regret coming." Rovan's fierce grin was all wolf. "Yes," he said. "Let's." They came as shadows first. Tessa saw them through the boarded window, dark shapes materializing from the tree line, moving with silent coordination. Wolves. Dozens of them. Some in human form, others on four legs, their eyes glowing in the pre-storm light. They surrounded the clinic in a perfect circle, waiting. "They're not attacking," Tessa whispered. "Not yet." Rovan stood at the center of the room, his posture rigid, every muscle coiled. "They're establishing dominance. Showing me I'm outnumbered. Outmatched." "Are you?"
His jaw tightened.
"Yes." Through the bond, Tessa felt his certainty, and beneath it, his fear. Not for himself. For the children. For her. A figure stepped forward from the circle.
Tall.
Silver-haired. Ancient. He wore dark robes that billowed in the rising wind, and his eyes, even from a distance, burned with cold authority. "Declan," Rovan breathed. The High Counselor. The old wolf's voice carried across the clearing, resonant and commanding. Rovan Ashfell, you are summoned to answer for your crimes against the Covenant. Emerge. Face judgment. Rovan's hands curled into fists. If I go out there, you'll die, Tessa finished. I know. Stay inside. Protect the children. When they breach. Take them through the back. There's a trail that leads to the highway. Flag down a car. Get as far from here as you can. Rovan, promise me.
Tessa looked at the bassinet.
3 pairs of eyes stared back, Kale's storm gray, Rin's amber, Luma's deep brown. They weren't crying. They were watching, waiting to see what the adults would do. I promise, she lied. Rovan's eyes flashed. He felt the deception through the bond, but before he could argue, Declan's voice rang out again. We know you shelter there, Ashfell. We know the abomination's live. And we know, his tone sharpened, that you have bound a human to your house. Silence crashed down. Every wolf in the circle turned toward the clinic. Tessa felt their attention like physical pressure. Treason, Declan continued. Compounded by treason. You do not merely break our laws, you spit on them. You endanger every clan, every pack, every wolf-born child for the sake of your half-breed spawn. Rovan's growl shook the walls. They are my heirs. They are poison. Declan's shout echoed through the trees. And the woman, the mortal who dares wear your mark, she will burn with them. Tessa's marked palm flared with heat. Through the bond, she felt Rovan's rage ignite into something nuclear. His power surged, a wave of dominance so overwhelming she staggered. The air itself seemed to bend around him. No, Rovan said quietly. Then louder.
No.
He strode to the door and kicked it open. Rovan, wait. But he was already outside. Tessa grabbed the triplets, all 3 cradled against her chest in a desperate bundle, and followed. The moment she stepped into the clearing, every wolf turned. Their eyes found the mark on her palm, the babies in her arms, and they snarled. But Rovan was already shifting. Not partially this time. Fully. His body erupted into transformation, bones cracking, reshaping, fur rippling across skin like wildfire. In seconds, a massive black wolf stood where the man had been, easily twice the size of the others. His eyes blazed molten silver, and when he opened his jaws, his growl was thunder. The circle of wolves faltered. Some dropped to their bellies instinctively. Others held their ground, but barely. Rovan shifted back, bones snapping into human form, though his eyes remained wolf-bright. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of something far older than flesh. I am Rovan Ashfell. Each word resonated like a drumbeat. Son of Gareth. Grandson of Morian the Unbroken. Alpha King of the Northern Clans by right of blood and trial. His gaze swept the circle. And I stand before you alive, despite your assassins, despite your blades, despite your cowardice. Declan's expression darkened. You stand in defiance of the Covenant. I stand in defiance of you. Rovan's voice cracked like a whip. You, who ordered the murder of an innocent woman. You, who sent killers for newborn children. You, who would rather slaughter your own king than allow him mercy. Murmurs rippled through the circle. The law is clear, Declan began. The law is broken, Rovan roared. Written in fear. Enforced through violence. It has made us strong, yes, but it has made us hollow. He gestured toward Tessa. This woman saved my life. She protected my children when your warriors came to butcher them. She is braver than any wolf in this circle, and she is human. Shocked silence. Tessa's heart hammered. She held the babies tighter. The mark you see on her hand? Rovan continued. I placed it there. Willingly.
Proudly.
She is packed now. Under my protection. And any who touch her, his eyes flared. Answer to me. Declan's jaw clenched. You are mad. Perhaps. Or perhaps I've finally seen clearly. Rovan's voice softened, but lost none of its power. You taught me that strength is dominance. That mercy is weakness. That to rule is to inspire fear. He looked at Tessa, and something warm flickered through the bond. But she has shown me another way. Strength through compassion. Power through protection. Leadership through sacrifice. He turned back to the circle. I was willing to die for my children. This human woman, this stranger, was willing to die for them too. Not because of blood. Not because of law. Because it was right. His voice rose. When was the last time any of you chose right over ritual? Justice over tradition? Silence. Then, slowly, one wolf stepped forward. Young. Barely more than a boy. He dropped to one knee. My king, he said quietly. Another followed. Then another. Declan's face twisted with fury. Stop this. He has broken the covenant. You broke the covenant. The shout came from a grizzled warrior at the edge of the circle. He stepped forward, eyes blazing. When you ordered the death of a mated queen, when you sent assassins for royal heirs, you speak of law, but what you practice is murder. More wolves stepped forward, kneeling, bowing their heads. Not all, perhaps not even most, but enough. Enough to matter. Declan's hands trembled with rage. This is treason.
No.
Rovin's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. This is justice. He crossed to where Declan stood and met his eyes without flinching. By law, I should execute you. You ordered the death of my mate. You sent killers for my children. You branded me traitor for the crime of loving. Rovin's claws extended. One word from me, and these wolves would tear you apart. Declan didn't flinch. Then do it. Prove you're still the savage they crowned. For a long moment, Rovin simply stared. Then he retracted his claws. No, he said quietly. I will not become you. Shock rippled through the clearing. You are banished, Rovin continued. You, and any who followed your orders. Exile.
Permanent.
If you return to clan lands, you will be executed. His voice hardened. But I will not kill you. Not today. Because mercy, he glanced at Tessa, is not weakness. It is the only thing that separates us from beasts. Declan's face went white with fury. You'll regret this, he hissed. Perhaps. Rovin smiled grimly. But I'll regret it as a king who chose justice. Not a butcher who chose fear. He turned his back on the old counselor, the ultimate dismissal, and walked to Tessa. She stood trembling, the baby still cradled against her chest. Tears streaked her face. You're insane, she whispered. Probably. Rovin's hand found hers, the marked one. But I learned from the best. Around them, more wolves knelt. One by one, the circle bent. Not all. Declan and a handful of loyalists remained standing, their faces twisted with hatred. But they were outnumbered now. The old counselor spat at Rovin's feet. This isn't over. No, Rovin agreed. But today, it's enough. Declan shifted, a massive gray wolf, scarred and ancient, and turned toward the forest. His followers went with him, disappearing into the trees like smoke. The remaining wolves stayed kneeling. Rovin looked at them, his people, fractured and uncertain, and raised his voice. Rise, he said. All of you. They obeyed. Change is coming, Rovin continued. To our laws. To our traditions. It will not be easy. It will not be bloodless. But it will be just. His eyes swept the gathering. Any who wish to leave may do so. No judgment. No punishment. But those who stay, you stay for a new covenant. One built on honor, not fear. The wolves looked at each other, murmuring, uncertain. Then the young wolf, who'd knelt first, stepped forward. I stay, my king. The grizzled warrior followed. As do I. One by one, voices joined. Not all, but enough. Tessa felt tears spill over as she watched. Through the bond, she felt Rovin's grief and pride tangling together. He'd lost half his kingdom, but he'd kept his soul. Rovin turned to her, his eyes soft. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For showing me what a king should be. Before Tessa could answer, Kale let out a tiny, imperious wail, the first real cry any of them had made. Rovan laughed, a rough, exhausted sound, and reached out to brush a finger across his son's cheek.
Come, he said.
Let's take them inside. They've seen enough war for one day. Tessa nodded, her throat too tight for words. Together, they walked back through the shattered clinic door. Behind them, the wolves watched their king, wounded, defiant, and utterly unbroken. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the northern clans knelt not in fear, but in hope. The sun rose red over Pine Ridge. Tessa stood in the clinic parking lot, watching dawn bleed across the sky. Behind her, wolves moved through the wreckage, boarding windows, clearing debris, removing bodies. They worked in silence, casting wary glances her way, but keeping their distance. She was marked,
Protected. Pack.
but she didn't belong here. Her duffel bag sat at her feet, hastily packed with clothes, toiletries, the few personal items she kept in her office. Her car keys were in her hand. The highway was 10 minutes away. She could be in the next county by noon, the next state by nightfall.
Gone. Safe.
Alone. Running. Tessa turned. Rovan stood in the clinic doorway, backlit by the emergency lighting still flickering inside. He'd cleaned up. Someone had found him fresh clothes, dark jeans, and a simple shirt that stretched across his broad shoulders. The wounds were nearly healed now, just faint silver scars tracing his skin. But his eyes were tired. Ancient. I'm leaving, Tessa said, hating how her voice wavered. You don't need me anymore. You have your people. The babies are safe. She swallowed. I'd just be in the way. Rovan descended the steps slowly. Each movement was careful, measured, like he was approaching something fragile. In the way, he repeated. I'm human, Rovan. I don't heal like you. I can't shift. I can't fight like your warriors. She gestured helplessly. Yesterday I got lucky. But the next time... You think luck saved us? What else would you call it? Courage. He stopped 3 feet away. Compassion. Strength that has nothing to do with claws or fangs.
His voice softened.
You stood between my children and an army. You fought killers with a metal rod. You bound yourself to a dying king because it was the right thing to do. Anyone would have.
No.
The word was absolute. They wouldn't. My own council wouldn't. My generals wouldn't. But you, a stranger who owed me nothing, you did. Tessa's eyes stung. She looked away. That doesn't change what I am. You're right. Rovan's hand found hers, marked palm to marked palm. The bond flared warm between them. It doesn't change that you're human. But perhaps, his thumb brushed across the silver sigil. It changes what human means. Through the bond, she felt his sincerity.
His respect.
And beneath it, something deeper. Something he hadn't named yet. Something that terrified her. Your people don't trust me, she whispered. They will. In time. He paused. Some already do. The young one, Kieran, he asked if you'd teach him field medicine. Said if a human could fight like that, he wanted to learn. Despite everything, Tessa almost smiled. And the others? Will follow their king's lead.
As they always have.
Rovan's expression grew serious. But I'm not asking you to stay for them. I'm asking for her. A cry interrupted him. High, imperious, unmistakably Kale. Rovan's lips twitched. Someone's awake. They walked back inside together. The clinic had been transformed. Wolves had cleared the blood, replaced the broken window, even scrounged up a proper crib from somewhere. The triplets lay inside, swaddled in soft blankets that smelled of pine and earth. Kale was red-faced and furious, tiny fists waving. Rin watched him with solemn amber eyes. Luma slept through it all, peaceful. Tessa moved to the crib instinctively, reaching down. Kale's cries stopped the moment her hands touched him. He blinked up at her, tears still wet on his cheeks, and made a small, questioning sound. I know, she murmured. Big day yesterday. Lots of scary noises. She lifted him, cradling him against her shoulder. His small body relaxed immediately, tucking into the curve of her neck. Through the bond, she felt Rovan's emotions surge, pride, grief, hope tangling together so intensely it stole her breath. "They know you," he said quietly. Tessa looked down at Kale, at Rin, now reaching for her with one tiny hand, at Luma, beginning to stir. "I've only known them 2 days. And they've only known kindness from one person in this world." Rovan moved closer, his presence warm at her back. "Their mother is gone. Their kingdom wants them dead. They're hunted, feared, called abominations." His voice roughened. "But when you hold them, they're just children. Safe. Loved. That's what you've given them." "Rovan. Stay." The word was barely a whisper. "Not as my subject. Not as a servant." He turned her gently, Kale still nestled between them. "Stay as their protector. Their guardian. The one who chose them when the world would not. I don't know how to raise wolf children. Neither do I." A ghost of a smile. "We'll learn together." Tessa looked into his storm-gray eyes and saw the truth there. He wasn't commanding, wasn't demanding. He was asking, as an equal. "What about your laws?" she said. "Your council. What's left of it? They'll never accept me." "Then I'll change the laws." His hand came up to cup her cheek, careful despite the claws. "I spent centuries enforcing rules built on fear, following traditions that valued purity over compassion. It made us strong, yes, but it made us cruel." His eyes searched hers. "You showed me another way. Let me follow it." Kale squirmed, making soft sounds of contentment. Tessa felt something in her chest crack open. She'd spent her whole life healing people, stitching wounds, easing pain, saving lives when she could. It was solitary work, noble but lonely. But this was something more. A family built not from blood but from choice, from sacrifice, from standing together when the world said run. "Okay," she whispered. Rovan's breath caught. "Okay, I'll stay." She adjusted Kale against her shoulder, then reached down to stroke Rin's soft hair. "But not just for them. For you too. Because someone needs to make sure you don't do anything stupidly noble and get yourself killed." His laugh was low and warm and utterly human. "Deal." He reached for Luma, lifting her with the careful reverence of someone holding the entire world. Together, they stood over the crib, Wolf King and human healer, holding the children who'd changed everything. Outside, footsteps approached. The young wolf, Kieran, appeared in the doorway. His eyes went wide when he saw them, but he dropped to one knee immediately. "My king. The perimeter is secured." He hesitated, glancing at Tessa. "The council remnant has requested an audience. Tell them I'll meet with them at sunset." Rovan's tone allowed no argument. "And Kieran?" "Yes, my king. Tessa Hale is to be addressed with the same respect you'd show any pack leader. She is guardian to the heirs. My trusted advisor." His eyes met Tessa's. "My equal in all things concerning their safety." Kieran's gaze flicked to Tessa, and she saw surprise there, but also something like admiration. "Understood, my king." He bowed his head to Tessa. "Guardian." Then he was gone. Tessa stared at the empty doorway. "Your people are going to hate this," she said. "Some will. Others won't. And in time." Rovan shifted Luma to one arm and reached for Tessa's free hand. "It won't matter. Because they'll see what I see." "What's that?" "That the strongest wolves aren't always born with fangs." He squeezed her hand gently. "Sometimes they're born with something better. A heart brave enough to fight for those who can't fight for themselves." Tears spilled down Tessa's cheeks before she could stop them. Rovan leaned forward and pressed his forehead to hers, a gesture of trust, of intimacy, of pack. "Thank you," he whispered, "for staying. For them. For me." Tessa closed her eyes, feeling the bond hum between them, feeling the weight of 3 small lives depending on them both. "We're going to figure this out," she said. "Somehow." "Yes." His voice was certain. "Together." 3 months later, they said the world had changed. The northern clans were fracturing, half following the exiled Declan, half pledging loyalty to their king and his new covenant. Skirmishes broke out along territorial lines. Treaties were rewritten. Ancient laws challenged. It was chaos. But in a small cabin at the edge of Thornhaven territory, rebuilt from the ashes of the old palace, there was peace. Rovan Ashvel, Alpha King, warrior, survivor, sat on the floor with his children. Kale crawled determinedly toward him, tiny claws already showing. Rin gurgled happily in a pile of soft blankets. Luma watched everything with those knowing eyes, already too wise for an infant. And beside him, cross-legged and smiling, sat Tessa. Her marked hand rested on Kale's back, steadying him. Her other hand was tangled with Rovan's. Around them, wolves came and went, some still wary, others warming. But all of them showed respect, not because she was marked, not because she was protected, because she'd earned it. Kieran stood guard at the door, learning field medicine in his spare hours. The grizzled warrior, Marcus, had taken to calling her Lady Guardian with genuine fondness. Even the skeptics kept their distance, unwilling to challenge their king's choice. The world called him the Alpha King. They spoke of his strength, his power, his dominance. But the truth was simpler. He survived because a human woman chose compassion over fear. Because when the wolves came hunting, she stood in their path and said no. Because love, messy, defiant, impossible love, was stronger than any law. And as Rovan watched Tessa lift Luma into her arms, singing softly, he knew one truth above all others. He'd been a king for centuries, but she'd taught him how to be human. And in the end, that made all the difference. The end.